Uh, yeah. I just wanted to thank you because I know it's like really late there, and
Yes. No, no, no. I'm happy to do it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was, by the way, I'm used to it because I mean, I've worked with a lot of American companies in recent years, and the time difference is a pain, I have to say. But yeah, much as I love visiting LA or New York, I never feel that tempted to leave Hong Kong, I must say.
Yeah.
It's still my favorite place.
Well,
So I'm used to the time difference.
why don't we start, Bay? Just because I'm like not only bad at introductions, but can you just spend a few minutes basically talking about where you were born, where you
Yeah,
grew up,
happily.
your family, where you went to
Yeah.
school, and when you made
Yeah.
and how you got involved with
Yeah.
with Asian movies, and when you
Yeah.
made that decision to, yeah.
Sure. Well, I was actually adopted as a baby
Oh,
and raised
okay.
by very kind of square English parents in a very quiet city in England called Peterborough.
Okay.
And my dad was an accountant, my mom was a nurse. And from when I was really very, very young, I was fascinated by the moving image in all its manifestation, television and film and comic books and anything, these moving images telling a story. And fascinated with martial arts, Asian martial arts. And I would say even before people knew who Bruce Lee was, or there was David Carradine doing kung fu, I wanted to do judo. I'd seen like Captain America doing fighting somebody using savat. So I was fascinated when I found some years later that the moving image and martial arts could be brought together in this incredibly dynamic genre, which was martial arts movies. I just had this innate sense that this is something I wanted to do. I wanted to practice martial arts. I wanted to be
How
involved,
old were you when
but
you?
it was
How old were
I
you?
would say, I mean, just in a vague way, from as far back as I knew that there were martial art movies and martial art TV shows, I wanted to be involved.
Okay.
And of course, my dad, as an accountant, was, overjoyed at this. Like he was like, you're not Chinese, you don't know Chinese, we don't know anybody in the kung fu world, and what are you going to do? It did seem and I don't say that in any way critical of him. I mean, I'm probably very liberal with my kids. There's not much they could say they wanted to be. Actually, if one of my kids said they wanted to be an accountant, I might worry. But that aside, but I'll tell you something interesting, and I haven't talked about this too much on interviews, but in terms of my fascination with martial arts and the moving image, I think there's a kind of magic involved because my biological mother, who gave birth to me, she was 15. She was Australian, is Australian, and she came to give birth to me in England. And I was adopted by these English parents, and she flew back from England to Australia and met the man who is now my beloved stepfather, Tino Seberano, who was the founder of karate in Australia. So she started training in karate in Australia. So she's on one side of the planet doing karate, and I'm this little kid on the other side, and I'm going, I want to do martial arts. So there's a kind of magic there of what was it? I was somehow communicating, and she was into movies and music and martial arts, and my adopted parents were not. So I didn't find that out till later. I didn't meet my mom until I was in my mid-20s. But in the meantime, I'd been living a life more in sync with my Australian family than my British one, my English one.
It's them genes, huh?
So yeah, it was
Yeah.
there was some connection.
Yeah.
And uh, if you believe, I believe that we in this lifetime are, spiritual beings having a human experience rather than human beings having a spiritual experience. So if you buy into that, all manner of communication and all manner of manifestation makes sense. If you just believe that we're like these human machines, then I guess a lot of stuff is more harder to accept. So I never really had a problem with the idea that somehow this communication was happening. And so I was kind of looking for a way in to this business. And, it's like Joseph Campbell talks about the path of life finding you.
Hmm.
And one thing I realized was that I became a magazine writer and an editor within the field of martial arts and action films. And in that regard, I was rather like what Frank Zappa said about Rolling Stone. He said it was people that can't talk, interviewed by people that can't write, for people that can't read.
Yeah.
And that was that was martial art journalism when I came into it.
Yeah.
So it was a field day for me just to be remotely literate and articulate. And so the people who were doing martial arts, the people doing martial art movies were like, this guy is kind of smart, well-read, educated. I'd been to schools, the best schools in England. I dropped out from a highly prestigious university, so I had something, a little bit more education perhaps than the average guy that was into kung fu movies. So I parlayed that in kind of an education. Because I think if this is in the years before podcasts, if
Of
you
course.
called somebody up and said, I want to come and sit and talk with you for 2 hours, and I just want you to tell me everything about how to be in movies and how to do this stuff, you might be hesitant. But when you say, I want to come and talk to you for 2 hours about you, and I'm going to put you on the cover of my magazine, again, everybody said yes. So I had this great education, and I had that chutzpah that at the end of the interviews, I would say, "Hey, by the way, I've got the script here that you might consider." I mean, now I shudder. I think, what was I thinking? But it's like the
You're
bumblebee.
talking
If you
about, you're
actually,
still in England at this point, correct?
yeah, it's still in England, and
Yeah.
if I like the bumblebee. If you actually, explain why the bumblebee can't fly, it would probably fall out of the sky. But you just go on faith. So I was still living in England, and my very first film experience, I'd had a friend move to Hong Kong, and bless him, he spoke to a gentleman in Hong Kong who was a director and a producer called Philip Ko, and he said, "I want to do a movie in England. Do you know anybody who's a producer?" And I've always been a bit like Jim Carrey in The Yes Man. I always said yes to stuff. So I was just like, somebody called me, "You want to be a producer?" Yes. Can you find the locations? Yes. Can you do the casting? I just, yes.
Yeah.
And you act as if you have faith, and faith is given unto you. So I just fell into my first movie, Guns N' Roses. And do you remember Simon Yam
Simon, who worked
from
on our
Blood
film as an
the
actor?
Chinese actor you
Yes.
fight at the end of Blood Bond?
Yes.
He was the star of my first film.
Yeah, but a lovely guy.
And
Lovely
a
guy.
lovely man, wonderful act. He's like our Michael Caine, I think. He's been in many, many movies. On his day, one of the finest actors you could hope to find. But so
Was he
Simon
was
came to
he in
England.
that first movie that you went you did you go
Yeah.
you went to Hong Kong to
No,
pro-
he came to England.
he came to
The
England?
first
Okay, go ahead.
film,
I'm
the
sorry. Go
first
ahead,
film was a
explain.
producer and director in Hong Kong. I asked a friend of mine, "Do you know anybody in England who could produce this movie with me?"
Okay.
And the guy said, "Well, there's this guy Bey, you could try him." And I had no experience. I hadn't been to film school in a conventional sense. So Philip's people called me. I didn't speak Chinese at the time. And one of his guys called me and said, "Hey, we're coming to this movie. It's called Guns N' Roses. Would you like to be the producer?" And I was like, "Sure." And now I look back on, I think, what was I thinking? Because I just knew nothing. But I figured I could kind of learn. And so Simon flew in, the director flew in, and we shot in Birmingham, we shot in Paris, we shot in London, and then we came back and shot in Hong Kong, and that finished. And that was my first movie. And I went back to England, and I thought, gee, maybe the way I fit into this puzzle is I'm going to live in England, and people will come to Hong Kong from Hong Kong to England to make movies,
Yeah.
and I'll just produce in Europe. But there was no other follow-on film. And then some friends of mine in Hong Kong said, "Hey, you want to come and write and produce a movie? We've got some money. Come and help us out." And that was it. So I flew over,
How
thinking I would do this.
how old were you at that time that you flew
I'd
over?
already had one career. I'd started editing magazines and writing them when I was 21, and then which now I look back on it was really extraordinary young age to take on that responsibility of a monthly publication. And then I was probably pushing 30 when I began my second career, which was being a screenwriter and producer in Hong Kong. And I did the first movie was utterly chaotic. There's a movie called Living in Oblivion with Steve Buscemi, and I think this was the Hong Kong version of Living in Oblivion. It was just really chaotic, and about, I don't know, before they even started production, I decided that the egos were out of control. The whole thing was just haywire, and I just quit. I left, and I only
Did
had
the
one
movie
other friend in Hong Kong.
did it get made?
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you
Okay,
briefly what
keep going.
happened. I
All
mean,
right.
so I had written the script,
Oh,
tried to try. I think I was in the land of the blind. I was the one-eyed man. I knew something of how you produce and sell a film. So, but the other guys involved, their egos were like running around like crazy. And it was just every day it was this clash. And I didn't know, maybe I still don't always know, but I didn't really know how to handle that. So I was just like, well, you guys do it. I'm out of here. And the only other friend I had in Hong Kong, luckily, was a guy called Donnie Yen, who you made. I remember you saw some of Yip Man. And he was in the recent John Wick as the blind assassin. He was in Rogue One. But at that time, Donnie was kind of just at a bit of a lull in his career, Donnie Yen in Hong Kong. But he and I were really good friends. But I'd interviewed him for the magazine, and that had turned into a friendship. And I said, I don't know what to do. This whole thing's fallen apart. It's a nightmare. I'm either going to go back to England or whatever. And he said, look, I'm doing a movie in China. I need to go to fight. Why don't you come and fight me in China for, 6 weeks? So I had such a beating behind the scenes on this first film that being physically beaten up by Donnie felt like a good option. So I flew to China to do that. And I always remember, I mean, there's a big difference, and you can relate to this because I was always admired your coordination and physicality from not from training in martial arts, but doing a lot of action scenes for movies. You know, you had this great physicality. I felt I was pretty competent in like Chinese traditional martial art, but when you started doing the movies and these kind of pre-rehearsed sequences, I found it really hard work, and that's why I haven't done it that often. But this movie I did, and just my luck, I'm fighting the fastest man alive, which was Donnie Yen. And it was a funny scene. He said to me, he said, "Okay, Bey, I am going to kick you 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and you use your hand to block, 1, 2, 3." And most people's feet are slower than their hands, but not Donnie. So he was doing this. And by the time he'd done his third kick, I just moved my hand once, like this.
Yeah.
And then he leans in and he says, "Could you speed up?" And I'm like, "Could you slow down?" And then finally we got into sync and we sat down and afterwards like, and he goes to me, "Man," he said, I said something funny and he goes, "Man, if only your body was as fast as your brain." And I said, "Huh, if only your brain was as fast as your body." So this was Mutt and Jeff. But meanwhile, I'm hearing these stories from the movie the movie began came to be was being shot under the title Tiger Storm, and I kept hearing these horror stories. And it starred a British actor who was based in LA for a long time. I think he still is. His name is Gary Daniels, and he did a lot of B movies in the 80s and the
I've
90s,
heard
and he's
that
still
name.
around
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But Gary starred in this movie. I'd introduced him to be in this film. And what I heard was that they ran out of money. It was all chaotic. And they got a third of the way through shooting and it just fell apart. And Gary had flown back to make another movie in America. And the short story long, another company bought all the rights to this footage to finish the film, a distribution company. They bought the footage from this unfinished movie because Gary had some kind of market, some value in the marketplace, and they cut a trailer together and they raised so much money from the trailer that they didn't need to use any of the existing Hong Kong footage. They started from scratch and they shot the whole film in Canada, and they only had two people come back from the original shoot, Gary Daniels and me, which was kind of like my introduction to quality filmmaking. The movie actually is pretty good. It's called White Tiger. They shot it under the title White Tiger. It had Gary, Julian,
Are you
and
talking about
Phil.
the original movie that you left, or
The original movie, the first movie that I was hired or brought
and
on for
then
Hong
walked
Kong
off
to do
of? And that one,
that was
is
called
that what you're
Tiger
talking
Storm.
about? Is that what you're
Yeah, and
talking
then
about now?
shot like a third of it
Oh, okay, okay,
and
gotcha.
sold that third. They sold the footage
Okay, got it,
to a
got it.
sales and production company.
Okay,
And those guys cut a trailer from that
yeah,
third of footage,
yeah, got it.
went around all the markets of
Yeah,
that time, like American Film Market, Cannes,
yeah.
MIFA, raised so much money on Gary's name that they decided to dump all the Hong Kong footage and just start over with the money they'd raised.
Okay,
So
and
they
they
shot
kept you,
the movie from the beginning.
and they kept you.
Correct.
Does
And they
that does
Okay.
kept
that
Gary.
mean? And I just got a question because Donnie Yen he's a fantastic martial artist and I love him a lot. Does that
Yes.
mean that he was kind of cut out of the movie? Is what you're saying?
No, Donnie, no, sorry, these are two different movies. The movie
Oh,
I shot with Donnie in China as a fighting guy was called Circus Kids. It was a pure Hong Kong film. And my only involvement with that was as a bad guy, as an actor.
gotcha. Okay.
So with Michael in the room to describe him as maybe, but and fighting. So that was one movie. And the movie that I'd come to Hong Kong to do, Tiger Storm, was reborn as White Tiger, and it was shot in Canada, and it was with Gary, Julie Nixon Soul, Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, an actor called Matt Craven, and
I
it
know
turned out
Matt.
pretty good.
I know Matt real well.
You know
Matt,
Matt, right? Yeah, he was
yeah.
in it. He was great. He played the partner who gets killed and sets the whole thing in motion. Anyway, it was really good. It was a great experience. And I came back to Hong Kong and I was like, well, am I going to kind of decide this has been my Hong Kong adventure, that I've been in a movie, I fought Donnie Yen, had this catastrophic experience, I've had this good experience with White Tiger. Do I go back to England now and just do other things? Or do I make a go of it in Hong Kong? And what happened was I met one of the people who'd been peripherally involved with the original Tiger Storm. He's like, I can't believe you're here. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, one of the other guys, and I don't want to give him a credit, but anyway, there's a guy, he's quite a high profile guy in that martial arts scene who was a producer on the movie. And he said, because of everything that happened, that they'd only hired me, they hadn't hired anybody else, he was mad. And if you stay in Hong Kong, he's going to kill you. And I said, really? I said, well, you've made my mind up for me. He said, so you're going to leave? And I said, of course not. Definitely going to stay. I mean, if he'd have said, I'll kill you if you leave, I would have gone. And then now it's been like 30 years or so. So get on with it. Would you please?
Right. You're still alive.
Still hasn't got around to it. I guess he's been busy. But I've got that kind of like, contrary personality. If somebody says, if you do this, I'll kill you, I'm more likely to do it. So
Right.
then that was it. And then I kind of like drifted around doing whatever jobs I could find in the industry. And then one day I was at a company called Media Asia. And I realized the mistake I was making is I would always go in to these meetings, just talk about me. I'm so smart. I speak some Chinese. I do Kung Fu. I've seen every movie known to man. I fought Donnie Yen. And I would they'd probably just say at the time, oh, cute, young British guy. And that's nice. And then I'd go away and they'd forget about me. And this company, I went in and they had all the English language materials for their movies in the lobby. And I started reading them. Cop killing, wife, assassination, revenge, wanting. And it was just terrible. So I went in to see the boss and I said, by the way, before we talk about me, those English language materials are a disgrace. You should get somebody to rewrite them. And the boss says, well, who do you know who's available and, affordable and would come in twice a week to do that? I was like,
yeah.
So that got me in. So I was sitting in the corner as like the token white guy. And other Chinese people working at the film company would go, who's that guy? And they said, well, that's our white guy. And I said, okay. So then they come over and they say, hey, mate, can you help out with this, script, subtitles? Can you come and be in the movie? Hey, we need a guy to play a cop tomorrow. Can you come?
Yeah.
So I started picking up just by being there. And this is what I always say to my kids, say to younger people, there's this kind of firewall and you're here and you've got to get there by any means necessary. And my big break came because this is where the journalism really came in. I'd interviewed Jackie Chan, the Kung Fu movie actor, many times.
Wow.
And developed something of a simpatico with him. And I knew they were doing a Jackie Chan documentary at this company, and I desperately wanted to be involved. But it was very much that section of the company, they were doing their own thing and they didn't want me involved and they just wanted to do it themselves. And the mistake they were making was they were just filming Jackie. They were following Jackie around. And it's like, Michael, if I did the Michael Biehn story and I just followed you around while you're doing your groceries or while you're buying a shirt, it's missing something. So they had all this footage and it was just terrible. And I happened to be in the office and Jackie watched what they'd cut and thought it was awful and stormed out and sees me across the crowded room and he goes, him! He knows more about me than me. Why isn't he making the documentary? So that was it. I was
There
in.
you go.
Because if Jackie said yes, no one's going to say no.
Of course.
Of
And I
course.
worked with and for Jackie for about 4 years. And we did 2 documentaries. And then he did three or four. We did 4 films at this company where he wasn't starring in them, but he was producing them and his action team was doing them. And I was writing them and helping to produce them. One of them, Gen Y Cops, it was a similar situation to Dragon Squad, where we had a partner company in America, it was called Regent Films, and they'd had an Oscar success with Gods and Monsters with Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen. And for some reason, they wanted to come in and do a Hong Kong action film with Jackie Chan, even though he was only producing. But one of the conditions was you had to have an American actor. And we ended up with Paul Rudd.
Wow.
And it was Paul Rudd's first action film.
Wow.
And my first experience working with someone the way I work with you, Michael, of Hollywood guy coming to Hong Kong, it was Paul Rudd, which was before he'd done, I mean, he'd done quite a bit of work, Cider House Rules, Clueless.
This was after Cider House? This was after Cider House
and Clueless?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Here's what happened.
Wow.
Basically, we had a list of actors, and if we could land any one of them, Regency would come in. Regency, I think was the name of the company, would come in and co-finance the film. The first guy on the list was David Boreanaz, who'd been in Angel, and he turned us down flat, which, as it turned out, I think he needed the gig more than Paul Rudd. Paul was making a film called Long, Hot, Wet Summer about a summer camp. I think Bradley Cooper's in it, and Jennifer Aniston and him.
Okay.
It's like one of those youth comedies, Long, Hot, Wet Summer. And he was stuck. They were filming at one of those camps, the real one.
Yeah.
And we sent him, our movie was a sequel. There was Gen X Cops and Gen Y Cops. And Gen X Cops was, we sent him the first film. And he was stuck at this camp, and he's watched it again and again and again. And it is a very entertaining movie. And I guess it just kind of somehow hypnotized him into thinking it would be fun to do a movie in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And so he indeed flew in. And there's another mirror to this as well. That was the first movie I did with Maggie Q.
Oh.
And part of why Paul enjoyed the experience was Maggie is such a trip, as you found out.
Yes, yes.
So fun to be around.
Yes.
She makes the whole thing.
Yes.
So much better. So that was really good. But there was one funny incident. Paul had already signed to do a play for Paul Newman, the late Paul Newman, and Joanne Woodward at their Playhouse, which I think I think it was on the East Coast. But anyway,
it's in Connecticut. In Connecticut.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had already arranged, we would arrange our schedule. He would fly back for a week or 10 days, do the play, and then come back to Hong Kong. I had a fear that he'd be all these East Coast, kind of actor types, lovey types would make fun of him doing a Hong Kong action film, and maybe he wouldn't come back. But he came back on schedule, and I said, "How was it?" He says, "Well, the first night we were there, we had dinner at the Newman Woodward farmhouse, and we're sitting at this long table, getting to know you dinner with all the actors." And Paul, to introduce everybody, says, "So what are you doing?" And one guy says, "Well, I'm doing Death of a Salesman in Chicago." Yeah. And another guy, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm going, To Kill a Mockingbird." Then they get to Paul, "What are you doing?" And Paul takes a gulp. He goes, "Well, I'm doing this action film in Hong Kong with Kung Fu and a big robot and all these girls in leather kicking each other." And there's a beat. And Paul Newman takes a long drink of his beer and he goes, "That must be an absolute blast." And so Paul said, after all of the other actors were jealous, and all Paul Newman wanted to do was ask him questions about filming in Hong Kong and what it was like.
Yeah.
And so all the other actors were jealous, why is he? And so he couldn't wait to get back because he'd got that Paul Newman. Because Paul Newman, I think, was kind of an adrenaline guy. He was a car racer.
Of course.
Cool. No, one of those guys. That was the fun thing. So we finished out that movie, and then Michelle Yeoh, who of course later won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, who I would later work with on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2, she came to join the company I was at, Media Asia. So there was kind of a parting of the ways that you're either going to do films with Michelle. Jackie left at this point, Jackie Chan. I'd done my run of films with him at Media Asia. And he said, "I'm going to another company, Emperor. I'm back to an international film there. If you want to come and write and produce that with me, you can come with me." And it was a glory time for my career because Michelle was saying kind of the same thing about a movie she was going to do called The Touch. And I don't know, it's just there was some issues, I think. I remember very clearly at Media Asia, the head of the company saying to me, "You had so much fun on Gen Y Cops, no more fun for you," which is not how you inspire your staff to stay on, no more fun. Whereas I thought with Jackie it'd be fun. So I went and did the Medallion, which was this action picture which Emperor did. We shot it in Ireland, we shot it in Hong Kong and Thailand with Jackie and Claire Filani. Do you know Claire? She was wonderful in the movie.
Yes,
So
yeah.
great. Very good action. Meet Joe Black.
Bey, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Were you on that movie as a producer? And
Both.
And writer or producer
Both.
or what?
Writer and producer.
Okay.
It's an odd combination. But you know what's funny about Hong Kong is you get people in Hong Kong movies who are like writing the music, that they are doing the production design, and they're acting in the film on the same movie or different films. You don't have that kind of church and state that I feel in Hollywood. It would be thought odd. And there's people who are really successful producers who also they're consistently playing in movies as a certain character, but they're very serious producers as well. So it's almost like whatever you can do, they allow you to do. There's no unions, the restriction is basically down to you. I like that. I mean, I think the idea of like, okay, if I can do it, they let me do it.
Yes.
So I want to use an example, like when we were doing Dragon Squad, after Dragon Squad, Daniel was going to go up to China to do a film based on a very famous. In fact, I think you narrated the trailer for this. It was called Three Kingdoms, Resurrection of the Dragon.
Yes.
And you narrated the first trailer. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And so that was because he was saying to me, I want Maggie. It was going to be with a very famous Hong Kong actor called Andy Lau. Another guy called Sammo Hung, who you'll remember was also in Dragon Squad.
He had the big Sammo. He had the big series over in America, correct?
Martial law, yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
And he wanted Maggie to come and play this kind of warrior princess, and me to come on and help. And I was just like, he said, so what? I said, what is exactly? It's going to be in Mandarin. It's going to be in China. It's going to be in the Gobi Desert for like 4 months. And I was like, nah. I just couldn't see. Well, if it had been in English, and if it had been an international cast, if it had been something where I could see I could make a contribution, but I think Daniel just wanted company, and he wanted somebody to help take care of Maggie. I did fly out and spend quite a bit of time there. I'll tell you one odd experience I had. We were staying in this remote desert town, and I was walking back to the
where
hotel.
was this? Where?
Gobi Desert, the big desert in China. It's big, expansive, nothing.
Okay.
There's some very famous caves called the Dunhuang Caves, which have these amazing Buddhist paintings.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's just the lone and level sands. Far away. I was in the town. I'm going back to the hotel, and suddenly everything went black. And I thought, oh my God, I've gone blind. This is, what a weird phenomenon. Why would this suddenly happen? And what happened was nothing ever happened in that town after 9 o'clock at night. So that's when they turned the lights off. So after a moment, my eyes adjusted to the fact that all the lights had gone off at one time.
Right.
And I kind of made my way along the wall.
Right.
And then there was a guy in the hotel lobby, the light underneath his face, like a horror movie.
Yes.
So I was so glad I wasn't apart from my visiting Maggie, I was not at the Gobi Desert. So movies that I did, I would say almost without exception, were films where, I felt I could make a significant contribution if the script was going to be in English or partly in English, as was the case with Dragon Squad, then I could be involved with all of that. And on the producing side, the casting, and then also figuring out how the film would be marketable and acceptable to a broader audience. When I came into the industry, China really hadn't opened up completely to Hong Kong filmmakers, strangely enough.
Right.
So the foreign market was really important. So when we did Gen Y Cops, having Paul Rudd in there was important. When we did Dragon Squad, having you in there was important. When we did Medallion, we had Lee Evans. It was meant to be Rowan Atkinson. Wow. So I said we have Mr. Biehn and Mr. Beankirk. But Rowan had just done a movie called Johnny English, and he just didn't want to do another action picture right after that. So we got Lee Evans, and Lee was. I don't know if do you know Lee? He was
No,
in
no.
Mouse Hunt for Gore Verbinski, and something about Mary. He's the guy on crutches. He was a hugely successful British stand-up comedian. He's
Okay.
retired now,
Okay.
but he was a guy, and it was so unfortunate. Off camera, he had me and Jackie in stitches. He was
Right.
the funniest guy
Right.
you could imagine.
Yeah.
The cameras would roll and it just wasn't there. I can't explain. It just didn't catch the way
Wow.
you wanted it to.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that was unfortunate. But I mean, we soldiered on and we did the best that we could do. I'll tell you a funny story from Medallion. In one scene, Lee Evans, this white British comedian, was made up to look like an old man. So we took him into Jackie's trailer and said that this was Lee's father. And he's visiting Lee on the set. So Lee affected this very thick Northern English accent. And he goes, aye, aye, my son's a great young lad. You know, I'm so happy he's doing film with you, Jackie. It's fantastic. Jackie goes, oh, he's a very funny guy. Often I'm laughed so hard I cannot acting. He's so funny. You must be proud of your son. He's a wonderful man. And he goes, aye, aye, well, I'll see you, Jackie. And he walks out. So as far as Jackie's concerned, he thinks that he's met
He's
Lee's
dead.
father.
Yeah.
And then Jackie's real father came to visit the set. So I took him into Lee's dressing room, saying that we had put makeup on Jackie to make him look like an old man. But it was actually Jackie's father who did look like Jackie as an old man. You know what I mean? And Lee's like, my God, this is incredible. You really can't see the joint. And he's got Jackie's father's face like this, and you know, pulling at the eyes and everything like that.
Oh.
And while he's got the face like this, Jackie walks in. I thought our goose was cooked. And Jackie looks at us all and he goes, Papa, no good. And then he pulls his dad away out of the room. No more was heard of it. I'm glad. That's probably why I still have a career. But yeah, that was on the Medallion, which was this is something, it's funny. I don't know if you agree with this, Michael, but it's something that Gary Daniels actually said, which I think is true. He said, it takes maybe 3 months to make a movie and 90 minutes to watch one. So for me, I want the 3 months to be amazing.
Yes.
And if the 90 minutes are good too, that's great. But, he said, I don't want to suffer for 3 months for 90 minutes of brilliance necessarily. And I'm not sure that's 100% right, but
Yeah.
I have learned that I think the Medallion was about 3 years of my life, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2 was about 2 years of my life. And the experience was so incredible.
Yes.
I wouldn't undo it for anything. There's
Yes.
things that disappoint me about the finished film.
Yes. Yes.
But you know
It's
what I mean?
always, philosophically, it's all about the journey. They always talk about the journey, not getting to the end.
And
that's,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So much out of your hand.
I find the same thing, Bey. Any movie I work on, anything I'm working on, it's the most fun. Really, is working on the movie. When
Right.
it comes out, if it's a big hit, I guess that's wonderful too. But you being able to do your work as a producer or as an actor, as a writer. There's something about that creative bond that you have with the other people that are all doing it. It's like a team. There's like a team effort.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'll give you this and I'll give you that and I'll give you the best of this that I possibly have. And I've always found it to be that collaboration of people that are all working for the same thing to be bonding. It's always so bonding,
There's a real brother.
I even remember I had a physical realization of that moment. Actually, it was the second movie after Blood Bond. The next movie I did at the same studio in China, the film was called Borderland, aka Covert Operation. There was a moment when everybody had to lift a roof, what was going to be the roof of a set, and it felt like it just wasn't going to work. We weren't going to get it high enough to go on these supports. And everybody appeared out of nowhere. The actors, the crew, the camera people, everybody. And I just felt this wonderful feeling that this physical action happened with this kind of collective good energy.
Yes.
And it was just a wonderful it encapsulates exactly what you're talking about. John Boorman said the director John Boorman said a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. He said that filmmaking is the magic of turning money into light and back into money. Love that idea of like that kind of almost like when you see, these kind of particles in physics that you somehow
Yeah,
make
yeah.
them real,
What was the
and
Borman movie, Jim, where Patricia Arquette and somebody else are like traveling across? Somebody gets shot in the stomach, and they proceed to, climb mountains and.
Is it Beyond Rangoon?
Yes, Beyond
yeah.
Rangoon is not like one of my.
John Boorman was the opposite of me. He would have gone to the Gobi Desert. He did a movie with his son Charlie called The Emerald Forest,
Yes,
which took him out into the wild. And
yes.
I still watch Excalibur once
He
a year.
did Deliverance, right? Is that
He did
Deliverance?
Deliverance,
Deliverance is the
yes.
movie that really put him on the map.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
another one. It was funny because I just saw an interview with, I think it was Burt Reynolds. Yeah, it was with Burt Reynolds, and talking about the fact that he was kind of like talking at that time. He was very gung ho, and he has to go over the rapids and over this kind of waterfall. And they wanted to use a dummy, and he said no, and he did it. He got banged up as he went over, all the rocks hitting him, and his kind of wetsuit was all torn open, and he hurt his leg, and he's in hospital. And then John Boorman comes to see him, and Burt Reynolds says to John Boorman, "So how did it look?" And Boorman says, "It looked like a dummy."
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So it was like,
that happens to me. That happened to me on the Terminator. That happened to me on Alien. Alien is a perfect example of like when Sigourney Weaver's got the thing wrapped around her neck, or her and Newt are running away from the thing, and I come crashing through the window. Well, it's just like a stunt. Like, okay, well, I can do that. I want to do that. And that stunt, another stunt that I did on the Terminator. Which is a little bit painful. It happens so quick you can't even tell it's me. I mean, you have no.
That's an interesting thing. I'll tell you, that's one of the attributes of Hong Kong cinema. That is one reason the films look special, is that everybody is trained towards action, including the cameramen. And that would never happen on a Hong Kong movie because you'd get the footage. The guy would make sure that when you land, he'd angle the camera so he would see your face. And they do that with they know how to hide it if it's not you, if it's a stuntman, and if it is you, in Hong Kong, because that's such a part of the brand,
Right.
they'll make sure they angle it around. And in fact, Jackie had his worst injury, Jackie Chan, when he jumped off a castle wall in Yugoslavia.
Yes.
And he kind of had a serious. He hit our head on a rock as he fell off the castle wall, and he had to have surgery, and he's got like a hole in his head now. Like many people in Hollywood, but he admits to it. And he kind of like was landed on this thing, but he would have been completely uninjured had the cameraman not been Yugoslavian. And this isn't trashing Yugoslavians particularly, because a Hong Kong cameraman would have used the camera as a human shield to help Jackie when he fell and to protect him. But the Yugoslavian cameraman whipped away with the camera and, Jackie hit the rocks.
Yeah.
But even the cameramen, if you look at the way stuff is shot, they are actually very nimble and agile. And I think we had some pretty good guys on Dragon Squad who were they're using Steadicam. There was an agility to the way they were shooting stuff. And I think that's part of what makes Hong Kong cinema so kinetic, is it's not just the director, not just the action director, not just the actors, but everybody on the production is kind of action trained.
We had an actor on here who was talking about working with Jackie. And years ago, I started sort of watching Jackie Chan stuff.
Yeah.
And there's that, his stunts and what he is able to do, the way that he can just climb a wall, it is inhuman. It is, I've never, ever, I mean, I don't know, maybe Buster Keaton, there's his stunts are just phenomenal. I mean, we talk about Tom Cruise doing his own stunts, and yes, he is, but he's all gagged up and stuff, and he's got like wires all over him, and it's wonderful. And he does a stunt, and it helps sell the movie. But Jackie is just like, I mean, I've just seen. if you do see a documentary on him, you just see stunt after stunt after stunt after stunt.
Yeah.
And you're like, how can
I
they
did
do
a
that?
documentary, I think it's on YouTube, called Jackie Chan My Stunts, which was basically
I
him.
might have been what I saw.
Yeah, him showing how he does the stunts, and then he was showing. But what's amazing about Jackie? It's a bit like Ali saying, "I'm the greatest." There's a scene he did this incredible cop movie called Police Story,
Yes.
where at the beginning he's in a car and they toboggan down through the shanty town on the side of a hill in Hong Kong, and it's just this incredible sequence. And we're showing it in the documentary. He's looking at it on like a screen on a Steenbeck or something, and afterwards he turns to the camera and he goes, "After 20 years." Still the best, and because it's Jackie, you just go. When we did Medallion, I got from him advice that was like my hallelujah moment when I kind of got an idea about his filmmaking, and also I think about filmmaking in general. We were shooting a scene. We were shooting in Ireland, and we were in a. I think we were shooting meant to be in a hospital, and it was really an old hospital building in Ireland, and Jackie has got this habit, and also Gordon Chan, the director, had this habit, which drove me crazy. Is the beginning of every day, or even the beginning of every scene, they would start rewriting everything. So it was like chasing Mercury to kind of try to make it make sense. Like I'm thinking, in 3 months' time, we have to edit this thing, and it has to make sense, and not only make sense for Hong Kong, but for America, for Hollywood, because that film came out, was a wide theatrical release in America, so it had to make sense. So I said to Jackie, no, this is funny, but if you do this, what we shot last week, it's not going to make sense. And he looks at me like I'm a moron. He goes, Bey, listen, very important. Doesn't matter. Make sense, not make sense. What matter? Audience, they happy. And I was like, there you go.
Yeah.
If you get that, firstly, you understand every Jackie Chan film because they don't really make sense. But scene by scene, they're amazing.
What?
But also...
Yeah, I was gonna just ask you what year did we make Dragon Squad, and what was Daniel was, is it Daniel Lee?
Yeah, he's great. It's funny, his Chinese name is Lei Gong. But
by the way,
his nickname,
by the way, let me stop for a second.
Yeah.
Ringo,
Sure.
whatever his name is, his real name's not
Ringo
Ringo.
Lam?
Yeah, his name's not Ringo, is it? Didn't he
It
make
is.
that?
He's passed away now. There was
He didn't make that up to be part of part of the American scene. His real first name was Ringo.
Yep.
Really?
He did a bunch of movies. Yeah, same as you, Johnny Ringo. He did a bunch. Ringo Lam did a bunch of Van Damme films.
Yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme movies.
Yeah.
The best of which was called Replicant, which they shot in. I think they shot that in Canada. But he did a bunch of those, and he did some amazing films. He did like a version, the Peter Weir film Witness with Harrison Ford.
Yes.
He did a version of that called Wild Search with Chow Yun-fat, which is really good.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And he did a run of movies. Sadly, passed away quite young. But his name is Ringo Lam. His Chinese name is Lam Ling Dong. And Daniel is in Chinese Lei Gong, but his nickname is Lei Gong because Lei Gong sounds like let somebody speak, but Lei Gong is don't let somebody speak, and that's his nickname because he's very
perfect for a director, right?
Well, but no, the only person, one of the few people I saw who had him wrapped around the little finger was you, Michael, because he would just basically
talk about. Do you remember the first time? Do you remember the first time we met? Did you pick me up at the airport? Did you meet me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember you picking me up at the airport,
okay.
But
I remember. I remember very distinctly that we, and this isn't a diss. We had gone through the belly of the beast to try to find other actors to be in the movie, but I had gone to people.
Couldn't find anybody, so they ended up with me.
It was the opposite from my perspective because one of the guys in contention was Dean Cain, ICE agent Dean Cain.
Yeah.
But we kind of like it hadn't worked out with anybody, and then he brought in the DVD of The Rock and your famous scene, like I cannot give that order, as you said to me, an order you probably should have given.
Yeah.
But he showed me this, and he goes, "You think we can get this guy?" And I was thinking, man, if we've been turned down by Dean Cain, I don't think we're going to get this fella. But I mean, anyway. And my recollection was, and I don't know the, I can't quite remember how I got your direct number, but we were talking on the phone, and my initial reaction was just that I could answer your questions, and perhaps you felt confident because, well, at least there's one guy who kind of speaks English and knows what's going on. So you committed to do the film, and as you mentioned in your earlier podcast, I believe we paid you quite well on the movie, so that was attractive, I guess. And my feeling was that you were up for the adventure of coming to Hong Kong. I sent you to train at Benny the Jet Center, remember?
Yes, and I did.
And Benny told me how good you were. I mean, I know you are because I mean, the crazy thing was, and this is Hong Kong filmmaking at its worst. You had those attributes, and then when we did Dragon Squad, I said, when does he get to fight? I said, Chingala, the action director, when does Michael get to fight? He goes, well, we're thinking, he's very cool and he has a gun and everything. Never. But then later I saw you fighting on Blood Bond.
Well,
but so then I remember picking you up, and then as you talked about before, we went to this lousy, service apartment in Hong Kong. Like F this.
Let me tell.
And then went to the Mandarin.
Yeah, let me tell this. So anytime, Bey picks me up at the airport. His producer. First of all, Bey and I have always had so much fun. He doesn't seem like it now, but he's a very funny. He's a very funny, very very funny guy, and we just like bonded immediately.
I remember your line before you said he's funny for the first week, which I think probably, many people in my circle believe to be the case, but they daren't say it now. But yeah.
No. We got along right from the word go. So it's his job as a producer, to find me a place to live. And as a producer, you try to find a place for your lead actor to live, which is comfortable, which has got the amenities, whatever all this kind of stuff is, but doesn't cost a fucking fortune. I mean, that's his producer's job, right? So, so Bey takes me. I don't know if it was in Hong Kong, kind of like on the outskirts of Hong Kong. It was kind of like an apartment building, and I don't know. It feels like somebody else.
I think the deal breaker was when you looked out and you saw the railroad tracks. And that was the moment you said to me, Bey, I don't think I'm staying here. But then that was funny. A very interesting, important event happened inside that apartment, because I think you did stay. You stayed there at least long enough for Daniel Lee to come and visit. So I'm not sure if you stayed overnight or whatever.
You're right.
But Daniel came in, and we'd done an approximation. It wasn't like there were two versions of the English script. There was an approximation of the full Chinese script in English. And then there was the dialogue scene by scene. And these were two different things. So you had an approximation of the whole thing, and then we were going to work on the dialogue scene by scene for the English language scenes in the movie. And he had written this monologue that was meant to play over a bank heist. And it was Michael talking for probably a page and a half about three rabbits in the forest.
Nonsense. I couldn't make heads or tails of it.
You know what? What I love and admire about you, Michael, was that there are guys that would come in and say, "I'm not doing this," but you came in and you're like, "I'm going to give it a shot." So we're sitting there, and Mike and Daniel's like, "Okay, let's look at the script." And Michael, why don't you start with this wonderful speech about the rabbit? So Michael turns to that page in the script and he starts off. There was a white rabbit, a black rabbit, and a gray rabbit. And they were doing this. He keeps going on and on. And bless him, he got halfway through. He looked up at Daniel and goes, "To be honest with you, I don't know. Can we swear on this podcast or not?" Yes. I don't know what the fuck this is about. And Daniel ripped across, tore the page out of the script and said, "No, we're not going to do it." And that was like...
That's when I said, "I like this guy." I like this guy. I wish a lot of directors that I'd worked with had, when I said, like, "I'm having a problem with this," just went, "What? Oh, that's gone. Don't worry about it. That's gone."
The other thing with Daniel was, like, whenever Michael was on camera, if Michael would say one line of dialogue or do a Clint Eastwood squint, Daniel Lee would do a little dance of joy behind the monitors. He just loved it. And Michael was like, I don't think James Cameron is quite as expressive, but your other great directing buddy.
Yeah.
But Daniel was just, oh, that was great. Oh, that was amazing. And I said to Michael, I didn't know if it was too much, but what do I know? Michael's like, this is kind of great.
But I told Bey, you're right. We did have that meeting. I might have stayed there a day. I said, Bey, take me into town. I want to stay in Hong Kong. And you said, fine. And we're driving around, and I look up, and I say, what is that? And you said the Mandarin. I couldn't get it right. Mandalorian. I got too many of them in my life. The Mandarin, right? And I looked at it, and I go, the Mandarin. I said, what is that? It's a hotel. Yeah. Let's go check that out, right? So he takes me to the Mandarin, and what a fucking awesome hotel that is.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, it had to cost it had to cost quite a bit of money compared to that apartment. Compared to the apartment that you had.
Well, on Kowloon side,
it was a beautiful something about that hotel, and I've been in, I've stayed in a lot of hotels. I just dug that hotel. I thought that was a fantastic hotel.
It was super.
And it was more in town, and you and I were able to get together a lot and walk and have coffee and lunch and sit around and kind of get to know each other. I had a great time. Tell that story that you told me about the actor who turned 40.
That was a very famous singer turned actor
from the what's it called, the Mandarin?
And and he was just a phenomenal actor and just so
big
gifted
star, right?
And yes, a movie star and just a wonderful actor, and had been in films like Chinese Ghost Story, A Better Tomorrow, which was the breakthrough John Woo gunplay movie. And he was interesting because it was known in the industry that he was gay, but he played heterosexual roles effortlessly, and there was never an issue. So he was a phenomenal presence and an interesting figure. And as you say, I think he turned 40, and he one day was at that hotel, and he went to the gym and he worked out, and afterwards he asked for a pen and paper and he wrote like a suicide note, and then jumped off the balcony and died. I was doing a movie with Jackie at the time called The Twins Effect. And I remember we were all on the set, and we thought he'd just done a movie he made a movie about, I think he may have even directed it, that was about mental illness and suicide.
Really?
Standing on a ledge and everything. So we thought this was some sick marketing campaign for the film. We didn't believe it. But sadly, it was true. And to this day, taxi drivers in Hong Kong see his ghost on the corner where he landed.
Well, don't they have? I mean, even when I was there, maybe not anymore, Babe, but it seemed to me like there was always a couple of hundred flowers. Like people leave like flowers on that corner. I'd come out of the hotel, and that there's always like a big bunch of flowers where people come by.
I mean, I think the equivalent would be, a James Dean or an Elvis or somebody who was so much part of the cultural landscape that to this day, his nickname was Gogo, which means like elder brother. And I kick myself now because you'd think in a place the size of Hong Kong, you would have met everybody. I think I only ever walked past him at a movie premiere, and I could have come out when he was working on a movie, and for some stupid reason I didn't. But I never met him, and I was really, I learned a lesson from then on. If I had the chance to meet anybody I admired, I kind of made an effort to do it because you just don't know. That was the other thing of the Mandarin. Yeah,
I heard Bey talking on the podcast about working on Dragon Squad, and he was. Here's the thing about Hong Kong film at that time, and I don't know if it's changed at all, but there's no unions, okay? Nope. There's no unions for actors, okay?
None.
So, there was, you were talking about working, I think, like a 12-hour day and me getting like...
that was probably another thing I greatly admired about you coming in and... They going in and doing.
They work 16-hour days.
Oh yeah,
like nothing, and then fall asleep where they are, and then when the sun comes up, they start working again. I mean, 16-hour days was like.
I always quote the story, which was like we'd done a few of those days with you, and you kind of, I think unusually for a Hollywood actor, you just kind of like manned up and stood the course.
I remember we had like 14 hours in the can. And then Daniel wanted to go to another location, shoot another location. And I was like, oh, fuck, Bey, I can't do it. Like, okay, we'll go. And then you can tell the story about the coffee.
Oh, well, well, I mean, before that, I seem to remember, I think you were on the verge of going, is there any way can we not do it? And Daniel came over and goes, this is going to be great, Michael. We're going to shoot here. It's going to be so good. Oh, this is great when we go here. It's amazing. And you were like, okay, because I mean, his enthusiasm was somewhat infectious, and his kind of like he adored you, and you were like, oh, and this is going to be so good, and you're like, okay, we're going to go and do that. And then you've been doing about 14 hours straight, and I said to one of the assistant directors, "Can you the PAs, the production assistants, can you get these a cup of coffee?" And it was like kind of like so the guy first the tea lady, and they call it the tea lady because they can't make coffee, and so she was hovering around Michael. I'm like, "No, go away, shoo, we don't need you." I got the PA back. No, he wants a proper cup of coffee, hot coffee. So the guy goes away, and a normal amount of time later, he comes back to Michael and thrusts this can of ice cold coffee at Michael. And Michael promptly hurls it at the guy's head. But it was late and he missed. But
was it a can or was it a paper cup?
It was a can. So maybe it's a good thing. But it was late and you'd been working for 14 hours. Otherwise, you'd have beamed the guy.
I think it was 16.
He had one job. But I blame myself. I should have figured out this fellow wasn't going to do it, and but that was the only time I saw you kind of momentarily lose it, and with reason. But one of my badges of pride from Dragon Squad was when you were interviewed by the local English language newspaper, the South China Morning Post, and the interviewer says, "Mr. Biehn, you were in the film The Abyss, which is famously the toughest film shoot in movie history." And you replied, "Let me tell you, compared to Dragon Squad, The Abyss was like a Hawaiian vacation." I was like, yes. I was so, perversely proud of our insane working methods.
It's really, really remarkable. I mean, it just seemed like a 16-hour day.
Let me tell you another story that goes back to my first big movie for Jackie, which was called Gen X Cops. It was the one before the one that Paul Rudd was in. And all the guys in that movie were, at the time, I was older, but I was also doing my first big movie. So it was kind of a first movie for a lot of us. There was a guy called Nicholas Tzer, who became a big star. Daniel Wu, who later did a TV series in America called Into the Badlands for AMC. And he's done a lot of other Hollywood films. He's actually from San Francisco. Daniel was in the film. Stephen Fong, who became a director. A lot of these guys, the first film, but they were very young. And the director's name was Benny Chan. And Benny had come up working under other great directors like Johnny To and Choi Hak, who's another famous Hong Kong director. So he knew the ropes. And they were complaining about the same long hours that you had to tolerate. And Benny said, "This is nothing." When Choi Hak was making a movie called Shanghai Blues, the production got behind and he locked the studio doors. And no one could come out for 3 days and 3 nights until they got back on schedule. And that was it. Food was brought in. Anybody left was fired. So you're within the studio for 3 days and 3 nights filming continuously. And everybody was like, wow. So Benny says, you see, compared to that, subsequently, I had occasion to meet the director Choi Hak, and I said, "Hey, you know what? When we were doing Gen X Cops, Benny told the story on you that when you were doing Shanghai Blues, you kind of locked the studio doors for 3 days and 3 nights." And Choi said, "That wasn't true." I said, "I think it could be." Choi says, "It was 4 days and 4 nights." He was proud. He was like, "No, 3. It was 4."
One of the good things about working on that was that I got a chance to work with Maggie. And
what a trip!
Yeah, and she is she was really wonderful, and she was so wonderful. We got along so well, and she's so fun, and we got along so well that I think I was with ICM at the time. I
Yep.
called
Ed
ICM.
Lamato.
I called it with Ed. I'm not sure if she
But
spoke
still,
to Ed.
but
I don't know.
he was kind of on his last run. I think he was kind of,
Yeah, but I called.
he was around, but not like of old.
Well, I called Ed or somebody at ICM, but it was probably
Yeah.
Ed. And I said, listen, I'm working with this girl. She's absolutely beautiful. She's absolutely, and she's funny. She's fun. I think she's a really good actress. And I understand she's Asian, but I was like, it's like meeting Marilyn Monroe or something. I was like, I think
Yeah.
you guys have got to check this person
Yeah.
out. And Ed probably sent somebody else to
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And nothing ever came of it and then what?
Well, I had the call. I had a conversation with one of the underlings at ICM at the time, and he was basically, I was saying, well, she's half American, half Vietnamese. He's like Vietnamese, like what's she done? What can we do with her? And kind of politely dismissive.
Yes.
And I went back to Maggie and I said, I think if you go to LA, you can get a meeting with these guys. And I admired her chutzpah. She was just like, when they invite me to do a big movie, which in the end, of course, was Mission Impossible 3 with Tom Cruise, then I'm going to go to LA. But I'm not going to go and just, go around and twinkle people's offices and do this and do that. Then the day that Variety had the headline, Maggie Q signs to Mission Impossible 3 for, Cruise Wagner Productions, as was at the time. The same schmuck from you'd introduced me to calls me up and he goes, "Hey, Bey, that Vietnamese girl you were talking about?" I said, "This is ridiculous."
A little late.
The day to sign her was when I called you, and Michael called you. That's when. When she's on the front page of Variety, my Aunt Hilda could have signed her.
Yeah.
But I remember one day, particularly with you and Maggie, which was in the movie. You're on the bad guy team. It was quite a bad guy team. There was a Korean actor. Remember Mr. He?
Of course.
Jun Ho.
Yes, I do.
Maggie, Philip, who later became recently had a big hit with a movie, Kowloon Walled City. Maggie, I mentioned. There was a bunch of them. The bad guy team, multi-ethnic bad guy team, and one of their number has been killed. So Daniel comes up very seriously to everybody, and he says, "Okay, for this next scene, this guy's dead, and everybody's going to do like a little memorial for him, and Mr. He is going to sing Amazing Grace in Korean." And then Michael goes, "So what do we do?" And Daniel goes, "Oh, you sing along." And so Maggie goes, "But we don't know Amazing Grace in Korean." And Daniel says, "Oh, well, you can just maybe hum or ha or something. Just be in the moment." So then they're all standing there, and the guy, Mr. He, who is a guy, he's actually been in some good Korean movies, but he kind of like took it and ran. He took stuff and ran with it. This was his big moment. So behind him, like the choir of the bad guy team, and Maggie is in Michael's ear with the thong song by Cisco, a thong, a thong, 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 a thong. And she's singing that, and Michael is holding back his laughter, take after take, and Maggie, as soon as action, Maggie would boom, 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 and she'd be kind of cutely going into his ear. And then Daniel came over, and I thought we were in trouble. And Daniel says to Michael, "That was just amazing. I could just see you holding back the tears. And if you only knew." So now he does. But she was a trip. She really was.
Let's talk about Blood Bond. Okay.
Yeah, let's.